journey to find out about a multi-billion-pound industry flowing through this quiet glen and out to a thirsty planet. I don't need to visit a world city, London, New York or Tokyo. The big money centres want a share of what's slowly maturing here. A sleepy backwater that helps define Scotland's place in fast globalising markets.
This is Speyside, heart of the Scotch whisky industry, and I'm here to find out how important it is to Scotland.
We have made Scotch whisky the number one international drink of choice. It's sensational.
But is that a success all of Scotland can enjoy?
I think the benefits to Scotland of the whisky industry are really quite disappointing.
Could the Scotch whisky industry give a little more back?
I believe that the success could be spread around a little more.
It's Scotland's water, and whisky is Scotland's national drink. Should we be getting more out of each bottle? My day job is to report on the Scottish economy, not only on the downturn, but what's looking up. And that's brought me to Edinburgh in search of a dram.
Hello, ticket for one, some magical mystery tour.
The whisky business is booming across the world. I want to find out why. I'm being taken for a fairground ride past the ghosts of distillers past.
And so food. Fresh water is, after all, a vital ingredient in the art of making Scotch whisky.
As a tourist attraction, it's for fun, and a serious reminder for me of the unique global appeal that sets Scotch apart. Only here can you distill and mature the world's premium spirit. It looks a simple enough process, but people here are being sold a package of image, tradition, and quite a bit of myth.
Just disappeared.
You get a glimpse here of Scotch as a magnificent, world-beating blend of marketing magic, but who's buying it?
So we were set up almost 25 years ago on behalf of the Scotch whisky industry to give visitors to Edinburgh a sort of showcase of Scotch whisky. But the big increases we've really seen in terms of visitor numbers are in the Chinese market. So although Russia and India and certainly South America are coming through quite strongly, the actual number of visitors delivered that's been most significant is China.
So whisky's new success owes a lot to big growth markets. Here's further proof. You tell me this is the world's largest private whisky collection, pulled together not by a Scot, but an enthusiast in Brazil. He sold it to Diageo, and that distilling giant brought it here. Competing for rare malts with buyers round the world, it helps to be minted.
Well, our most expensive bottles that we have at the moment are £10,000, and we have had a couple of sales this year where more than one £10,000 bottle of whisky has been purchased. So that had been our biggest sale ever before this year, but this year we've seen a few sales of between £30,000 and £40,000.
For more than 100 distilleries, a sprawling global reach, selling into 200 markets. The most recent export figures showed every second 40 bottles shipped overseas. America still spends the most, and it's France, while the French drink the most. And in recent years, the big growth has been further afield. South Africa, Taiwan, South Korea and Brazil, which saw its imports of Scotch up 48% in 2011. So what has whisky been getting right? The head of the industry's umbrella body is Gavin Hewitt.
Since 2001-2002, our exports have doubled, 100%. So we've moved now to £4.23 billion. That's the value as it leaves the country.
Adverts like these help generate sales of more than 20 billion. So who's this classic old world thoroughbred targeting?
We're appealing to the emerging markets. We're appealing to the affluent, the middle class, people who are aspirational, people who actually see Scotch whisky as their drink of choice, because that's actually telling them that they can afford it, as well as it just means that they're part of a global network.
Think Scotch in its new markets. Think cool, glamorous, elegant, powerful. It needs a bit of help with the lingo from a native son.
Glenkinchie, Lafroig, Lagavulin.
Not much sign of tartan or shortbread here, where image detonates explosive growth.
Works like a depth charge.
Product with a global market isn't anything that peculiar. Think of Apple computers, Toyota cars. But with whiskey, brand works differently. It doesn't feel like someone is selling me soap powder or cola.
What makes this very rare is that it's a product that has to be made in one country. But what's also unusual about it is it breaks the rules of globalization. It's not about one giant, powerful brand taking over the world, though Johnny Walker is a global brand. It's also about the variety that there is of different whiskies, of different ages and different expressions. The more variety there is, the more profitable it becomes.
Let's look more closely at those profits. In the past 10 years, the value of exports has nearly doubled, but the volume is up just over a third. And growing volume is what helps grow jobs in distilling and bottling, but with the value growing much faster, that's where profits come from. In other words, profit from whiskey is rising a lot faster than employment. But at least both are growing. That wasn't always the case. Let's look back.
Whiskey, whiskey, Nancy, whiskey, 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 Nancy, oh.
The industry sprang from the love of a dram, distilled locally. It was an early export success. Family firms got rich. Grant, Walker, Buchanan, White and Mackay. But that doesn't mean they were running the industry that well.
A lot of whiskey industry, way back in, say, the 60s and even the 70s, it was the seat of the pants. They kind of thought, things are looking good, we'll produce whiskey, X amount of whiskey, not worried too much about the stock position or the financing of it or things like that.
So this was a kind of a cottage industry.
That's a fair description. And of course, if you take the big company in the industry, Diageo, way back in the 60s and 70s, it was the Distillers Company Limited, and it was really split up. You had the individual companies like Johnny Walker, you had Sanderson's, Haig, White Horse, all of these doing their own things, competing with one another under the umbrella of the Distillers Company Limited.
So with many of the leading brands under its umbrella, yet in competition, Distillers Company was proudly Scottish with a business footprint in London. But should Scotland be proud of it?
They'd come in on Tuesday at lunchtime to start their working week, do a couple of days and leave Thursday at lunchtime back to their estate or to their big house in Surrey or their Highland estate, having done a week's work. It was a very leisurely business in those days, very patrician business.
Then came the 80s. With the Thatcher Revolution, inefficient business became vulnerable to a new type of businessman.
It's a matter for the shareholders, it's a matter for the Scotch whisky industry, and it's a matter for Scotland.
To understand how whiskey went global, one business deal was pivotal. Ernest Saunders was the boss of Guinness, hired to boost the brewer's family fortune. He sensed the potential of Distillers Company and launched a takeover bid. He locked horns in a battle for control with a Scottish entrepreneur. It was a bitter and dirty fight. So what kind of operator was he?
He was charming, absolutely charming. He was one of the men who would, nothing was enough. I mean, I used to get a phone call throughout this saga almost every weekend. Oh, Alf, I've just come off the tennis court. Sunday morning, Saturday afternoon, the big house in Buckinghamshire. I just thought I'd have a chat with you about such and such. He was just always available, always charming, and yet there was something about him that wasn't quite true.
Saunders gained the backing of Scottish business grandees and won control of distillers, but it was a deal built on deceit.
They promised in their prospectus that they would set up their head office in Scotland, and I don't know why the authorities did not insist on that, because no sooner had the battle been won than that was quietly dropped. And, it just didn't happen. Had the head office of what was then Distillers, subsequently Guinness, been set up in Scotland, that could have been quite transformational in many ways. Not that the industry is doing badly, but to bring a head office of that magnitude to Scotland would have been absolutely wonderful.
Saunders would eventually be jailed for insider share dealing to do with the Distillers bid, but his legacy lives on. The company he helped create became Diageo. Today it's a colossus not only of whiskey, but also vodka, rum, gin, tequila and rice spirit. This is the new global headquarters for Diageo, a company that last year made more than £3 billion in profit, more than a third of that from whiskey. Now this should have been a headquarters based in Scotland, but instead it's here in the west side of London, within sight of England's Wembley Stadium. I keep hearing this familiar tale. Company headquarters shift out of Scotland to London and beyond. Loss of corporate power can mean a loss of confidence as well as spending clout. How can Scots ensure they get the most benefit from what's produced here? And does it matter that Diageo is not headquartered where it distills so much shareholder value?
I think we have 5,000 employees in the UK, 4,000 of them are in Scotland, so which says quite a lot right there. I think if you had the headquarters in Scotland, it wouldn't add that many jobs. The jobs are here already. They're very good jobs, they're very important jobs. They are the heart of our industry, and they're the heart of Diageo.
Diageo is only one player, but it's a very big one. It's heading towards 40% of the market. The French company Pernod Ricard owns Chivas Brothers and comes next with 20%. Japanese and Indian interests are among those accounting for as much again, which leaves just the remaining 20% controlled from Scottish headquarters. So power lies out with Scotland. What difference does that make? And where does it leave the areas that produce so much of this valuable commodity? I've come to Speyside. Around half of Scotland's distilleries feed off springs and burns around this glen. It's an area of outstanding beauty, but it's got economic challenges. Pay rates here are among the lowest in Scotland. Skilled work is valued. This is the cooperage at Craigellachie, where you can see what 250,000 casks look like while awaiting repair. These men's jobs depend on whiskey, and the whiskey depends on them. You've got butts over there, sherry butts brought in from Spain, and right here you've got barrels. These have come all the way, it says, from Kentucky. Jim Beam bourbon. It's made from American oak, and about 90% of the wood that comes in here is American. The rest, much of it, is Spanish. One of the strange things about Scotch whisky is that although you've got barley, you've got water from Scotland, a great deal of the character that you get in Scotch comes from this wood grown many, many miles away from Scotland, with bourbon, with sherry infused into the wood, giving Scotch so much of its character and its flavour. These coopers are paid per barrel, and they're driven. No time for chat, no water-cooler gossip in this workplace. Lots to do to hit targets, to meet demand. And far from the modern marketing, these craft skills remain steeped and matured in tradition. So much for patience. I'm leaving here with the sense of an industry working at full pivot. In a less frenetic corner of Speyside, one of its malt whisky distilleries. Malts are used to flavour blends, which dominate the market. Bottlings of single malt represent less than a tenth of volume sold, and nearly a fifth of value. Billy Walker led a buyout of Ben Riach from Pernod Ricard 9 years ago. Since then, roughly tripling its valuation. So here's whisky's question for a country debating its future. Small, nimble and independent like this, or better placed fitting into a big player with a big reach?
Also, there's the big boys in this industry. Pernod Ricard used to own this, Diageo. They're putting a lot into marketing and advertising. To some extent, you've come along in the slipstream.
We've come along in the slipstream, but we're not in the same footprint. You know, we're not operating in the mass market. We consciously and deliberately do not engage with multiple retail stores.
You can't get Ben Riach in the supermarket.
You cannot get it in the supermarket, and my covenant to the people who have helped us in the private independent retail is you will never get it in a supermarket.
Which makes you happy you don't have to do it.
It makes me very comfortable. I'm a very happy boy.
I can see and hear this is no place for a quick buck. Maturing product for a market. Decades from now, it teaches you to be patient. So is long-term, long-distance thinking another factor that sets whisky apart? It's working for investors here using a foothold in Angola.
Well, the Chinese, of course, are investing in all African countries at the moment, and there's a lot of oil revenue in Angola. And as a consequence, there's quite a lot of money. And the duty-free area is probably the most sophisticated area in the country where you will be able to get the kind of choice that they were looking for. And of course, there's some very, very high-value stuff in there, and they're attracted to that.
So the Chinese workers on their way home come through looking for pretty high-end product.
Very high-end, top-end. And normally they're influenced by the boss.
So the boss comes in and says, I like the look of a, 25-year-old Ben Riach.
Maybe a 30-year-old, and if he chooses, the rest choose.
What's a 30-year-old Ben Riach going to cost?
Oh, that could be maybe £400 a bottle.
That's quite good business for you.
And it suits.
Son,
While Ben Riach sells its own malts through independent retail, I've headed upstream on the River Spey to see how a different small distillery can be a vital, thriving part of a big corporate structure. Cragganmore is one of Diageo's 12 Speyside malts.
I've been in the industry now for over 35 years, but I've never known growth like we're seeing just now. We've never seen the level of expansion within the industry to try and meet that expected demand, that expected growth. So it's definitely the sort of the most buoyant, the most exciting thing that I've seen in whisky so far.
Anticipated demand, Cragganmore operates round the clock, round the calendar, and I'm told distilling here takes only 8 people. That's one highly productive workforce at full stretch, but nowhere near what the industry needs. India is the world's biggest whisky market. As I learned when I visited recently, Scotch could take off here. But there's been a long-running tax dispute with India's distilleries lobby. And there's an even bigger challenge here and across the world, the threat of poor quality counterfeit brands which threaten sales and reputation.
I have 5 intellectual property lawyers whose job is to look after Scotch whisky and to make sure that fakes, as far as possible, are taken off the market. And we have a zero tolerance policy. We have an intelligence sectorate beyond belief, and my lawyers are dealing with 70 cases at any one day around the world. It's a big problem, but we, I think, are largely on top of it.
Challenges and opportunities. Scotch is not just valuable to Scotland, but those export earnings are prized by government here in London too. I've learned this is a product that can surf the wave of globalisation, but it does so on terms often dictated by powerful companies, where the benefits are widely dispersed and governments can wield little more than the power to tax. Whisky fuels the current debate about who controls Scotland's future and its economy. Among those who love the aroma of Scotch whisky are the mandarins here at the Treasury. You can almost smell it wafting through the corridors of Whitehall Tower, and it's no wonder that when the Chancellor sets out his budget each year at the Commons dispatch box, tradition dictates that he fortifies himself with a dram of Scotch. And in an industry worth some £5 billion a year, it's reckoned less than £2 billion of that comes to Scotland in purchase of supplies and in wages. Is it enough? I asked the economist, Professor John Kane.
I think the benefits to Scotland of the whisky industry are really quite disappointing. The largest producers of Scotch whisky are not based in Scotland. Their profits are mostly go to people who are not resident in Scotland. They don't pay very much tax in Scotland, and we don't think they pay very much tax in the UK.
Well, that's a picture the industry rejects.
We have already faced and already enjoyed over £1 billion of investment into Scotland in the last 4 years. I will put my head on the block now and say that we're going to enjoy £2 billion of investment into the Scotch whisky industry in the next 3 to 4 years.
Of course, it's perhaps this very success that makes getting more out of the industry rather tempting.
Well, I think the question becomes whether there's some way we could levy a production tax on this, and a tax of a few tens of pence a bottle. That's not very significant in terms of the overall retail price that people are paying for whisky, but it could generate revenue which in a Scottish context would be quite significant.
So what's being suggested is a tax on every bottle of whisky produced in Scotland. It would be the same amount for every litre leaving the production line. In each bottle there's quality, myth and mystique, but the unique ingredient is Scotland's water, and Holyrood already has the power to tax that. We commissioned research on how much that could raise. It showed that at 10 pence per bottle, it would raise £104 million. At 50 pence a bottle, 520 million. And at a pound, just over £1 billion a year. That's all assuming the whisky companies absorb the tax from their profits. In austere times, is such a revenue raiser something our political leaders in London or Edinburgh might want to look at? I ran the numbers past a former chairman of the Royal Bank of Scotland who chaired the First Minister's Economic Council, Sir George Matheson.
Well, it could, in theory, result in less sales overseas. I question that, in as much as the price is 50p or whatever it is, would not be a major percentage of the sales price. It's also highly profitable, as I understand it. So it would seem to me there's room there for some movement.
Would you expect much pushback if this idea were pushed forward? Clearly this is a lot of it would come from lower sales or lower profits within the industry.
I would expect pushback, yes, I would. But I do think the numbers that I have seen make it worthwhile investigating.
To be absolutely honest, I cannot see why any government would actually apply a production tax which would make Scotch whisky less competitive overseas against drinks, spirit drinks, or any other alcoholic drinks which are cheaper to produce and cheaper to sell.
From here in Leven in Fife, I watched this most Scottish of products being packed up and taken around the world. I've seen how whisky has brought pride, identity, jobs and global success to Scotland, but the industry warns against any attempt to levy more taxes.
Well, I hope it wouldn't happen. I think it's poor economic strategy. I think it's poor industrial strategy. I think if the argument in an economy is to take a successful business and then tax it, keep taxing it because it's successful, I think is the wrong impression.
Those who like the idea believe the industry has nothing to fear.
Well, I would not wish to harm it, is the first thing. I don't believe it would be substantially harmed, and I believe that the success could be spread around a little more.
I've learned a lot about this industry in my travels, about a traditional product sold in a modern way around the globe, and about what that means to us back in Scotland. I've even taken time to learn a thing or two about the whisky itself and how to appreciate its complexity.
I'm now getting Colombia and Venezuela, Singapore, Korea, distant hints of Vietnam and India, and strong note of profitability, and the salty, tempestuous, oceanic trade winds, because this is, in a sense, the modern economy in a glass. It's a product which reaches into almost every country in the world. It's a sort of liquid currency. And for all the myth that's built into the marketing of it, there's nothing mystical about the way that it approaches these modern, highly competitive markets, because this is seen as a threat in some parts of the world. But it's also been established as the desirable, aspirational drink to be seen with. So whether or not there's enough payback to its home country, this is a Scottish success story worth toasting. Slange.